Hi, True Crime Grapevine fans. Hi, it's me, Patty Lee, your favorite, or maybe not so favorite, Midwest mom who likes to talk about murder. What are we talking about today? Everything that I watched in true crime. Oh, and I'm going to bump things. You guys, today, crazy day. It is Tuesday, April 30th. And usually at my house around 9 o'clock, I wanted to go live at 9 because for the first crush to tell you about today's happenings on the interwebs in true crime. Usually everybody's either gone or asleep in my little house. And no, instead, I was just finishing dinner. Everybody's eating. Everybody wants to know what's going on. It's been a crazy day. So, how was your day? Good, I hope. All right, the True Crime Grapevine is back. We're going to do these first crush because in winemaking, the first crush is when they first squeeze the grapes. And I'm going to give you the little squeeze of each day, let you know what I was watching. And hopefully, if I do this, 100, 200 times, maybe people will show up. Maybe people won't. Here's the deal. I am a Midwest mom, a dyslexic armchair detective with a background in cognition, uh, motivation, and reasoning, which means I am interested in how people think and why they do things. And so, obviously, murder is very interesting in true crime, and that's why I watch it. So, I'm here to tell you what I watched all day and to tell you who I watched. So, if you want citations for deeper dives, I will tell you who I find after watching hours and hours who's the best. And so, Skelly, say hi to the people. Hello. Skelly is my true crime detective sidekick. And today, what we watched, sort of in order, was oh, can you see that? The Karen Reed trial. Let's talk about that first. It was the first thing I watched this morning. It is situated in Massachusetts. It involves the Canton, Massachusetts, which is a suburb outside of Boston, the PD there, and Karen Reed, who was dating a Boston Police Department officer who had friends in the Canton Department. And there is a whole backstory if you're not aware. Grizzly True Crime, Gizla K is your best bet for the most concise background deep dives. But Melanie Little, attorney at law, has been following this from the beginning. So, and she's situated in New York State, close to Massachusetts, knows a lot about Massachusetts law as well, knows a lot about this case. So, those are two good resources for this case. So, today, what happened? This is the first day I watched. It's the second day of trial, the first day of me watching. And I will tell you, it was very interesting. It started with a police officer who had gone to the scene being on cross. So that means the defense was questioning him about what the prosecution did on direct, which means the prosecution is the state uh, who is prosecuting Karen Reed, asking him about things that he said and heard at the beginning, next, like right at the scene, after the scene. Police often take, write initial reports, supplemental reports. And then he compared it to what this guy said at the grand jury, like a lot, like months later. And especially this name Proctor kept coming up. And I need to do more research. I've been doing the Daybell case, very into that. The Karen Reed, I did listen as soon as Melanie Little started talking about it, but I will tell you, Proctor is a name I'm not familiar with. He's somebody in the state and seems to be somebody related to the Canton PD who had a specific story spin. Okay, so here's the guy changed from his story from he pulled up. Karen Reed was outside the car with some other women around a body in the snow, screaming, being hysterical, and giving mouth to mouth, giving CPR. And he kept saying, she hysterically said, "Is he dead? Is he dead? Is my boyfriend dead?" Over and over again between trying to save his life. And he wrote that in his report as well. Well, then it morphed into she was saying, she had somehow said, "This is my fault. I did this." And the defense was really good at asking him, "So you left that out of your two first initial reports? You didn't remember that till months later that she had admitted fault at this scene?" And the guy's like, yeah. Oh, he also there was dispatch had three cars pulling up at once, and his was the second car. But in actuality, because he had a cam on his car, he had pulled up first, and it wasn't they. And he was there first primarily before a couple minutes before these other cars. So the whole dispatch documentation was wrong, and they never got into yet who who at dispatch helped. Like, let's hope dispatch isn't that bad. Oh, and he kept saying that this mistake, the time, the order. So the time was wrong. The order of who showed up was wrong, and then also wrong the um, address. Now, what's interesting is at this house in which this man was laying outside front of was the house at which his girlfriend, Karen Reed, had dropped him off, according to her, the night before for an after party after they had been out already. Um, and this was as a nor'easter was developing and blowing into the greater Boston area. She stated that she had dropped him off, gone home. And I guess the people there were also police officers and a first responder, and it was the Albertsons house. And they were saying, did the insinuation by the defense was that they put down the wrong address because the Albertsons would be well known, and they were trying to somehow obscure whose house this body was out in front of. Because interestingly, the police never went inside the house, never questioned the people in the house, and the people in the house with a dead body out in their lawn never came out to check, even though it was their friend, and they were first responders who could have provided aid, as opposed to Karen Reed, who just jumped on top of her boyfriend trying to help him however she could. But she's not a, first responder herself. That was all these things wrong, the wrong address. The changing of statements from just her being hysterical and helping to suddenly nobody remembered her helping, and people just remember her screaming about she did it, she did it. Next on the witness stand was a uh, firefighter, EMT responder. This was really interesting to me because I was walking my dog and listening, and I thought, okay, number one, he's a talker because he says too much. I'm a talker. That's really bad in a court situation because you can get into, you're just supposed to be yes, no. And when people talk a lot, sometimes it's covering up something. So I was just like, oh, and then when he was first on direct by the state because he's the state's witness. This is their case in chief. They mentioned that something about him, his whole like, oh my gosh, they went into so much detail about how he was this great EMT. And somebody in the chat, I was in the Defense Diaries chat, somebody did say they knew him personally and he's a really good EMT, but he had just gotten promoted, and then as he was talking about that, all of a sudden the prosecutor was like, okay, so let's not go into any more of that. Which, Skelly, what did you think? Did you think that was a little, I don't know, the catch. There was a catch in the guy's voice, like, and let's get away from this, which just was odd because he was saying how he got promoted to being the leader of his unit. Hmm. I wonder, like, and so in my head, I'm thinking, did he do something to get this leadership that the prosecution wants to, like, yeah, let's not talk about your recent promotion after you witnessed for the state. Not that that's exactly what happened, but it's not what happened. Again, I am not a lawyer. I am like I have a background in psychology, motivation, and reasoning. I don't have body language training, but the background in reasoning, cognition, motivation, kind of like the voice things. It kind of does, it just gets your attention. Anyways, but this is all allegedly. This is all just in my opinion. You guys know the YouTube thing, right? Um, and hey, if you're watching this and you haven't already hit the like button, I know I'm new at this. You might not. Skelly, would you ask them to please hit the like button and subscribe. It's free. Anyways, you know the YouTubey things. Anyway, this EMT guy, everybody when I got back to my house and was reading the chat, they loved him and oh, he's so honest. He seems so. I looked closer. The guy was hot. And again, in psychology, one of the things we learn about bias is people who are better looking get all kinds of treatment. I think 30 Rock had a thing about it, calling it living in the bubble. Like this girl just was like, I don't know why everybody's so nice to me. And the Tina Fey character was like, okay, because you're very good looking, everybody's very nice to you. Um, this EMT guy was very good looking, but it just made me think maybe people heard him and saw him as more honest because of that. But anyways, his description also seemed, one thing was very strange to me is he said, he did notice that Karen Reed was doing CPR. Um, he went to the head of John. He was the one bagging him, and the other person was the one doing like hooking up things, getting ready to put in the IV line, administer drugs. I guess he explained it very well. He does sound like an excellent EMT. Then he said that Karen Reed did say, like, he was the one who heard her say that wasn't a cop because nobody trusts the cop right now. The cops are being investigated by the federal government for corruption as regarding this case. So everybody already doesn't trust the cops, and then the cops are lying at the beginning. This guy seems, he's a firefighter, not a cop. Now there's only 2 firefighter stations in that town, and I don't know how much a lot of times mayors do things with uh, police officers and other town officials. I don't know how embedded the 2 departments are, but I know that 2 fire stations for a whole area isn't very much. So that tells me right away that this Canton is very, very tiny. But this guy did sound like he knew what he was doing, but he was the one. One thing he said is that he heard Karen Reed say, um, is he dead? But also, I hit him, I hit him, I hit him. Now, before I was in teaching and educational psychology, um, I was in acting. And it seems like a lot of YouTubers have acting. I mean, high school, college acting, not like anything, and community theater, but nothing professional. Anyway, Karen, I want you guys to listen to this. I hit him. What if I change my tone? This was an acting thing. What if I say, imagine somebody says, like maybe Jen McCabe, just allegedly, just hypothetically, that she says, I talked to the cops and they say he was hit by a car and that maybe you hit him when you dropped him off. What if she's like hysterically looking? She was looking for him all, in the morning, at night, couldn't get a hold of him, went to the last place she dropped him off, this house, finds him lying in the road and this woman comes out and they're like, oh my God, oh my God. And did 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 you hit him last night? Is immediately put into her head. And so she's like, I, I hit him? I, I I hit him? I hit him? Instead of I hit him. I hit him. I hit him. Those are 2 different tones that completely change how the person is like telling them how they really feel. One is like in disbelief, like I hit him. I hit him. I hit him. Like no way. What the hell are you saying? That can't be true. And they said she was drunk. She was drinking a lot the night before. Of course, they not only had they been to bars, but the bars, track your drinks and how many were purchased, anyways. And so she had, and then she also they did a blood alcohol test, I guess, of her at the hospital, but they did a blood test that it supposedly a certain test makes it much, much higher than an actual like DUI test and what it would be. Anyways, it came up really high, even though it was the next morning. So it seemed like she was convinced. And they also reported that she was, oh, I think they called it Section 12, meaning kind of whatever they in Florida, it's the Baker Act. They said, oh, she's suicidal. I don't know if I can say that on YouTube. She was going to self harm, so they took her to this hospital. Now, this EMT is seeing this woman freaking out, doing CPR, and he corroborates the police. Oh yeah, she said, I I did this. Um, then he said they put him on a sliding board, put him in the rig in the ambulance. Oh, the one thing was the storm was coming. He was supposed to work in 8 to 8, but he came in 2 hours early, right at 6, right when the call came in, which is kind of interesting to me. Okay, maybe he came to work early. That could be true. And he immediately, he's not on the clock yet though, and he has to work a 24-hour shift. Immediately jumps on the rig to go to the scene, and he doesn't have to. And he said, "Well, I heard the call. Seemed really serious." Okay, so the guy who didn't want to take, I don't know. It's just interesting to me. Again, I wasn't looking at how cute he was when I was listening to this. He said he worked 8 to 8, but he came in 2 hours early, um, because there was a storm. Now, there were pictures taken after the storm. I'm in around the Great Lakes, Michigan area, very snowy. I think the nor'easter brought in, I mean, it was nasty weather for sure, and you could see on all the body cam, the winds were horrific. But the actual snow was like 6 inches at the end of the storm. So this was 6 in the morning. It had started snowing around midnight, and I think it snowed into the afternoon, maybe a little bit longer. It looked like a storm, but it didn't look like a crazy storm where you'd be like, oh my gosh, I know it's 15 minutes away, but I got to drive 2 hours to get there ahead of time because this is going to be a bad storm. Just seems a little weird that he drove in just in time to get, you know, like maybe if someone showed up on the scene at 6, I don't know. It's once you start realizing that one person was lying and another person started lying, and now their whole, like everybody in the investigation is being investigated by the federal government for corruption of this investigation, you kind of wonder, so what in the heck's happening? But anyways, he said they put him in the rig, and they took off all his clothes. And he tried to explain it as, I mean, here's the thing. In the ambulance, when someone's, and I don't know if he was DOA, because he might have been, when you're putting in lines and stuff, they rip open your clothes. They do not strip you, though, as far as I know. I mean, they cut, they rip, they don't like gown you in the ambulance. Even in the emergency room, when people are, you know, going to be passing, they like rip everything off. And then if you make it up to go to a room, you're gowned and everything. So I don't know, it just seemed weird the way he was describing in the middle of this freezing snowstorm that this guy, that they didn't like, if he was going to make it, what, like they didn't put on a bunch of blankets. Um, so like his coat wasn't there. And then he said, oh, well, he was wearing a thick jacket, but so where was his coat? Was he, they describe him maybe wearing a parka, but then nobody has the parka. There's all this weird, unusual, missing stuff and change stories from, oh, this lady maybe backed, the story from the people at the house was, oh, she must have backed into him. She was so wasted. And I don't know at first if she even knew. And she was told this and sort of went like, well, I did this. I hit him. I hit him. I hit him. Not I hit him. Like, no, I did it. I really think hysterical, still a little buzzed, and somebody was telling her. And I'm sure it'll come out more if you don't know the background of the story of that somebody inside the house had actually Googled and then deleted their Google. How long can someone live outside in the cold or something? They think he was beat up in the house, is the alternative theory. The state's theory is that Karen Reed backed into him because she was really angry at him at 24 miles an hour, backed into him, somehow threw him like, into the yard. And The EMT guy also was, or the next maybe firefighter guy after that guy was describing he had an egg on his head, a bump, a hematoma over his right eye. What was interesting is they're saying that the car backed into him, knocked him out, knocked him in the yard. If a car hits you hard enough to throw you over the curb into the yard and knock you out, are you getting a bruise, a bump, or would you get a gash? I mean, I think if a car hits you hard enough to throw you, there's a gash. Also missing besides the parka, not parka, was one of his shoes was missing. And the EMT guy was like, we were worried about his life. We were trying to save him, trying to bring him back. We really didn't look for a shoe. And they had a snowblower. Somehow they had a snowblower to look around in the snow. So there's a blizzard, but they have not a snowblower, sorry, a leaf blower somebody got. I don't know. It was very interesting. The defense did show that it looked like there was a shadow of a person walking into the house because the party line is no, nobody came in or out of the house. The people in the house stayed in the house. Again, strange considering that was their friend, supposedly was supposed to come to their party. If their story is correct, he never showed up for the party. So if he was laying outside, wouldn't they be like, what happened? I don't know. There's a lot. The Karen Reed trial is interesting. The defense lawyers are very good lawyers. The one weird thing about the trial, when you listen to lawyers describing it, which is interesting, is that they don't make the objection with the rule. Like when you hear objection, hearsay. Like so for the record, for an appellate record, and for the judge to rule on if the objection is going to be like taken and they tell the other person sustained, meaning you can't ask that question that way, or overruled means they can't ask the question. Usually you have to give a reason why for the judge to make that decision and for an appellate court to look to see if the judge's decisions were accurate. And they don't do that in this court, I guess in this state. I don't know if it's all of Massachusetts. Instead, they just say objection and the judge decides herself if it's good for any reason, which a lot of the lawyers are like, that's really interesting. Because I looked up all the reasons. There's like uh, 15 rules that you can object by, like overall arching rules. Each state, it's probably a little slightly different number. It's really interesting. All right. Again, I'm a little bit of a trial geek. We will see more of the Karen retrial. Not tomorrow. They're on break Wednesday. So, and Dabo, quickly talk about the Dabo case. The Daybell case, Chad Dumble. Daybell, my husband calls it. Whenever I talk about the Daybell case, he would go, Chad Dumble. And I'm like, yeah, Dumble. Which is almost what his fake name when he was calling around for Charles Ashes were. What happened in the Daybell case? Just, they didn't have trial today because there had been an officer down who had passed away that they were having a memorial for back in their home county. So everybody was back there. But if you remember yesterday on the stand, there had been a mother and daughter pair, and the daughter had said, Chad was saying that Chad had come downstairs or Tammy had come downstairs. There was some stairs involved. And John Pryor, in his oh so snotty, oh so condescending, it's always the most pompous arses who want to make everybody else look dumb. And you're like, sir, right, Skelly? What do you think? He's the dumb one, right? He's rude. Skelly agrees. John Pryor's rude, especially to women, and that's what I talked about yesterday and about the stair thing. And I just hypothetically thought, maybe she was talking about down the hall. Because what Pryor asked Natalie was, so he said he went downstairs and she went upstairs and she was like, oh, yeah. And he goes, did you know the house is one story? Did you? And then he looks. I'll pretend Skelly's the jury. John Pryor is like, do you know that it's one story? And then he goes, Like, get a load of this crap. He's so rude. The little joke in Pretty Lies and Alibis chat, and I swear this is true, is when Pryor looks at the jury and goes like, he's hearing that dum dum from uh Law and Order show. He just thinks he's so slick. So the interesting thing is everybody wrote into like and I watched it last night and then today the lawyer, Peter Trago referenced what Nate Eaton said, which was a lot of people sent in pictures of the Daba house, and I had forgotten it too. They had like a little A-framey type addition to their house. Oh, and guess what? It's two-story. Two. Can you believe it, Skelly? He's a liar, and he should know why. Because he owns Chad Daybell's house now, so it's his house, and he doesn't know it's two-story. Calling that girl basically a liar, and what the lawyer, Peter Trago said was basically, um, maybe they'll go back and hit this with a different witness, but as it stands, he can't make an objection late. Well, you can't even make an objection 1 second too late. Like when somebody is interrupting and the objection is, oh, what do they always say? Oh, like it's not relevant or, oh, I forget. Like, and it, they if it's already out, they'll be the judge goes, I'm sorry, it's too late. They've already like asked and answered. It's kind of crazy. Anyways, that's what the new thing about the Daybell case was. We found out that it is two-story in the back, and that John Pryor like called the witness basically a liar, and he gave false information. Anyways, all right. Um, bloop bloop. Suzanne Morphew. Not much new has come out, but a little bit more has been, or at least I've heard a little bit more because I watched one of my favorite people who used to talk about the case, Lauren Sharf. She used to be from she worked in news, and then she had a friend, Sarah, who I believe either also worked at the station with her, and they would go travel up to Chaffey County back and forth to cover the Suzanne Morphew, Barry Morphew case. She and Sarah, Lauren and Sarah did a live last night that I just watched today. But one of the points was, I didn't know this, there was some clothes found and a bullet found with the skeletonized remains of Suzanne Morphew. Now, it has been named officially a homicide. And the three drugs that I tried to say, the three drugs that are known to be used in conjunction with each other in veterinarian work, and I pulled up a research article about it. It's called BAM for using the first letter of all the drugs. And they are used all three together. I found an article that mentioned these used for immobilization. I am not wondering, I am convinced that there seems, and this is just allegedly, just my theory, just my opinion, Iris Eaton, who I think is personally, just my opinion, allegedly um, in love with Barry. I think he's got her under his spell because that's what he does. He uses women. That's just my opinion. I have no proof for this, but it just seems like she's a little too into him and he really needs her help and he really needs it now. There's nobody else during the high part of COVID who would go to a remote area to uh, the defense is saying no, somebody abducted Suzanne and this proves it because besides the drugs in her system that they found in her bones, which is weird that bone marrow can hold what you had in your body, but also caffeine, and they're like, proves she was having she had coffee that morning, and I'm like, no, I believe it proves she ingested caffeine prior to being killed and she had a cup of coffee Saturday morning. We don't know it was Sunday morning because the big thing about the Suzanne Morphew case is one, she had asked her husband for a divorce. Two, it was during COVID, so there weren't a lot of people around and people weren't traveling back and forth. Three, she had been on her phone, sent a selfie to her boyfriend because she had asked for a divorce. She already had a boyfriend. She was leaving Bear Bear. When Barry came home, all of a sudden, after she sent this picture to her boyfriend, her phone never sends anything to anybody ever again. And that was Saturday about 2:30. And then Barry's phone goes into airplane mode between 2:45 and like 10 something at night. So, and the old thing was there was phone data that showed his phone all over the outside of the house, and they said, "Well, it looks like you were chasing something." He's like, "Oh, I was. It wasn't Suzanne. It was chipmunks, and I was shooting at them." Probably thinking, "I better have a good excuse if anybody heard anything." Um, and then they found the tranquilizing dart in the dryer with his shorts, just a pair of shorts and a sheet from one of the girls' beds. Uh, and they found this tranquilizing dart sheath, not the dart itself. And he was like, "Yeah, yeah, well, I use those. I mean, I use those to take off the horns from elk around here. And yeah, I use that BAM stuff, um, but I don't have any right here." And then it turned into later on, "Oh, I did use that when we lived in Indiana, but I don't use it. I've never used it in Colorado." So interesting switch there. Anyways, I um find it highly, highly improbable that she didn't use her phone for any reason between 2:30 Saturday and anytime Sunday until this abductor got her off her bike and just happened to use the same drugs that Barry used. Wow, that's such a coincidence that an abductor would find a woman who hadn't used her phone in over 17 hours and then use the same drugs that her husband had in his tranquilizer darts. It's so weird. I mean, that's quite a coincidence. And she just happened to be asking him for a divorce. He just happened to be known as a very jealous type. And he just happened to go to a work job in Broomfield when Broomfield said, "Yeah, there's a town ordinance that nobody can do work on Sundays." He just happened to go, though, like at 5 o'clock in the morning. He went to Broomfield Sunday morning to Mother's Day, as his daughters were out of town, left his wife sleeping just to get a jump on a job that he legally shouldn't be doing. And it's weird. He went so early because he's very so prepared. But oh, it's so weird. He forgot any machinery that he would need because he had to fix this big retaining wall, huge, like those big walls that you see on a when you're on an interstate and you pull off and you can see where they like dug out and it's like a curved wall with a bunch of big huge bricks. Yeah, the first time he didn't do it so well, and yeah, he was going back there to do the job, but oh no, he got called that his wife was missing, and it's really strange. He didn't bring his machinery, but you know what he did bring? A bunch of trash to throw away all over town in 6 different dumpsters, and he brought 2 shovels. And he was so careful with those shovels. He brought them. He didn't like have a work truck and leave them in his work truck. No, he brought those shovels inside, like not with his luggage, just hauled 2. Like, "Hi, I'm here at the Holiday Inn Express with my 2 shovels." And his room smelled strongly of bleach. And I am sure that those 2 shovels weren't used to bury Susan Morphew. Certainly didn't have her DNA on them. Certainly weren't cleaned with bleach before Barry took a nap because he had been up all night. I don't think that, right? Do you think that? I don't think he pulled a Fotis Dulos and took a bunch of clothes and bags that had, I don't know, bloody sheets, a bloody bathing suit that Suzanne was wearing, a bloody towel that she had on. I don't think that happened. Do you? Put it in the comments. Let me know what you think. Um, that you know, Barry on Mother's Day left early for a job he couldn't start until Monday without his machinery, but was conscientious enough to, because he didn't want to pay for, having his garbage hauled away, even though they had a big dumpster that he could use for his very expensive subdivision. No, he was going to take all his garbage like almost 2 hours away to Broomfield, because that is what one does on Mother's Day. Like, sorry, honey, I know I can't, I'm not supposed to work because of a noise ordinance. And I'm going to take all this trash and oh, darn it, I forgot my machine. Yeah. I think Iris is smoking something, you know, from that Mile High City in Denver. Maybe she gets it. I don't know. But I don't I'm sorry, Iris. They wanted a divorce. She didn't use her phone for 17 hours. And in her bones was found the drugs to immobilize big game that Barry had. I don't believe it was an an abductor on Sunday, because during COVID, do any of you remember not using your smartphone if you're on it? Anybody? Who wasn't? And she missed her best friend's daughter's wedding. I believe that was on Zoom. She was supposed to be watching, that she was very excited about. Missed that. But sure, sure, because she had caffeine also in her bone marrow. It proves that she drank it Sunday morning. I'm like, Iris, it's proving within hours of death, not proving within hours of when you say she went missing. I have to do better, girl. Gonna have to do better. All right. Uh, that's just my opinion. Just my opinion. Allegedly. Don't sue me. All right. Moving on. Oh my gosh, you guys. Dun dun dun. The case that never sleeps. Delphi, Indiana. Something's rotten in Delphi. We got so many filings today in the Delphi case. Now we expect to have hearings because it is going to trial. Countdown is down. Monday was 2 weeks. Now we are down to 13 days. And what we found out in these filings is, number one, Judge Gall, Franny, and I'm sorry, I want to start a um, FUQ Franny, hashtag FUQ Franny uh, thing on Twitter, because, oh, Franny, why you gotta be like that, girl? Francis has sent an email out on Sunday at 11 o'clock. I'd love to have Frances Goals. I'd love to pull her phone calls, because I'm guessing there might be some to Nick McClelland. I am just guessing. I don't know. Again, just my hypothetical allegation. I have no proof for it. It's my opinion that there is some weird ass timing between Francis Goal writing to everybody, hey, look, we're going to have this trial and it's only going to be 2 weeks. And so you all better be ready. And by the way, I know about third party defenses and I don't like them. You better come correct. Okay, she didn't say it like that exactly, but that was the essence was, um, this trial is going to be exactly this many days. She's got, I think, it's May 13th through May 22nd, maybe. Um, it's like 2.5 weeks, and that includes jury trial. She's like, this is going to be these days because none of you people have contacted me to say you need more. So this is what it's going to be. And by the way, I don't like third party defenses. I know all about them. She's a freaking expert, which is funny. It's funny that she's an expert. Did you know Frances was a prosecutor and before she was a judge? Yeah, it's weird. So prosecutions usually don't need to come up with the some other dude did it defense. They don't come up with third party defenses. They like to knock them down, but they don't come up with them. And so it's weird that she's an expert. Okay, Frances, we know what you're an expert in. Now, looking back at what we know, Monday was the day that Nick McClelland, the prosecutor, put out his weird, uh, you know, basically, mommy, tell them not to do this. Tell them they can't be mean to me, mommy. They can't mention this. They can't mention that, which I guess Bob Mata on the Defense Diaries did say some of that wasn't so strange. Some of it was a little odd. especially asking her to like make limitations, the motions in limine, meaning to restrict, to limit, that they were too vague. And um, but he wanted them, like, basically none of the third party defense stuff could come in. He wants her to say, you can't mention all these people's names. You can't mention it. And you can't mention anything nasty about me and anything nasty about the police. And you can't say we lied to you. And you can't say we withheld evidence. Not allowed. Can't do it. Won't have it. And so Francis had said that on Sunday. And then suddenly Monday, Nick's like, yeah, by the way, your third party defense, I don't want to hear anything about it. Now, did Gall tip him off? Was that, maybe she doesn't talk to him personally, but does she message? Do you guys remember in court for the contempt hearing? Nick objected and he didn't have a reason. And in Indiana, unlike Matt, he should go practice in Massachusetts, right? Because then they could just fill in the blank for him. But in this case, Gull was like, oh, do you mean an exception because of the investigation? And Nick's like, yeah, yeah, that's exactly what I meant. Then Hennessy said, excuse me, but that exception hasn't been like considered appropriate. Like that's off the books, 15, 20 years. And Judge was like, nah. And so what did Nick use the whole rest of that contempt hearing? Objection, part of the, something about the investigation. I don't know, whatever. It's not a real one anyways. And it was as if Goal was feeding, let me feed you, baby bird. And Nick was like, okay, mommy. Ooh. All right. Anyways, today the defense filed another Frank's. So this is Frank's number 4. And what they brought up was that, if you remember, the last filings at the end of last week had been to compel Nick McClellan, the prosecution, to give them certain information that they wanted that they still didn't have, like the custody of the bullet that they found in the ground 2 inches down after the scene had been released once. And they wanted the chain of custody for that. And they wanted all the stuff related to the pings and the cell phone data, the geofencing. Here's something really interesting. In Nick McClellan's thing yesterday, I told you about, he doesn't want them to ask about geofencing. You can't say anything. You can't ask. You can't question that guy, whoever their expert was that they named. You can't, no, Kevin. Can't talk to Kevin. Can't ask him about geofencing. No, you can't, which is weird, right? Like, oh, Nick. Anyway, today we found out that in the Franks hearing, that because they had asked for that motion to compel. And remember, Nick said it took us hundreds of hours from the 24th to the 26th, which, if you know anything about how time and space continuum works, as far as I know, we don't have time turners or expanders. We only have 24 hours a day. So that would be 24 and 24. Let's see, 48. Or if we want to even say 3 days, it's 72. He didn't even have 800 hours, let alone we just had to do hundreds and hundreds of hours of work to help the defense. And it's unfair, Judge. They should have to look for things. We shouldn't have to give it to them, even though there are all kinds of laws about exculpatory. You know what I mean? The law talking stuff that says your guy didn't do it. Exculpatory. It's like that. What's your back thing here, Skelly? Like that's what it sounds like. Exculpatory. Like your scalpel. That's what it sounds like to me. Okay, again, just looks, Okay. I'm so outraged at this whole thing. And it's hard to keep track because now we've got filings flying back and forth. And basically, Nick said, and we gave him this thing. One of the things today that was referenced was information about Libby's phone. This is very odd. Libby's phone, after the girls were found missing, Mullins, who was then the chief of police, worked with AT&T to ping Libby's phone every 15 minutes. So 5, like 39, I believe, was the last ping on the 13th. And then they couldn't find it. And so the guy was saying that means it's either, out of service, it's not working, it's turned off, or it's out of the area. After that, it never pinged again for the rest of that night until I don't know if there was a ping at 11. There was a ping at suddenly at 4:33 in the morning of the 14th, which means either, nobody broke the phone and fixed it. So it was either turned back on by somebody or it was brought back into the area by whoever had it. Now, the phone was found under Libby's shoe. Oh, how was this? It was found under Libby's shoe, under something like, and then under Abby. So the phone was placed there by someone after it was either brought back or turned on at 4:30 in the morning, which there's still those 3 phones that we don't know who were at the murder scene. The state still contends everything was done by 3:30. But then if everything was done by 3:30 in the afternoon, 4 o'clock, how was the phone there at 5 p.m., but not there and not on all night and then suddenly turned back on? And if you remember, Mike Patty had made some comment to the news that the phone was moving around, moving all over town, moving around. I don't know how this all squares, but from what this evidence that the defense was given seems to indicate, I don't know, where was Richard Allen at 4:30 in the morning? Because they said he was the guy who was muddy and bloody walking away. So that was by 3:30 or something in the afternoon, 3:45. So it just seems that that does not go with what the state says about Richard Allen. He didn't like have a phone and then sneak back at 4 o'clock in the morning to place it back or to place it with, or did he have the girls with him the whole time? There was that whole, it's not in any evidence yet, but people talked about they were looking, the girls were found like a mile, like just a half mile up, but it was very rough terrain on just into Ron Logan's um, land. But you couldn't like just walk there straight from the bridge. You had to go up and around. There was all this very rough terrain. It was said that people thought they had looked there and they were surprised when the girls were found there because they thought it had been searched, but then but obviously not, right? Because they would have found them unless the phone wasn't just moved, unless after 5 the girls were out of the area and they had sort of like I guess geofenced. So again, this isn't testimony. This is just what we're hearing through filings. So the defense now that's another Frank's motion added to the rest of them. And the Frank's motion is, I believe that the state is, oh, what does Frank's mean? That there's not enough evidence to show that the person did it, I believe. I will look that up for tomorrow. Hey, kitty, kitty. My black cats are being crazy. So the Delphi case is getting crazy. The defense has now requested 2 hearings. Gull has yet to finish her ruling on the contempt motion, which I still wonder if she's going to throw them off the case. I think that is at least a 50% chance, if not more, because when I read what the Supreme Court of Indiana said about how she removed them from the case, it seemed more of like procedurally she shouldn't have done that, not that she couldn't do it. And so I think that's why the very next day when Rozzi and Baldwin were reinstated, Nick filed that contempt crap. that she immediately took up and was like, yeah, we'll have a hearing on that. So how it stands now is where we don't know how she's ruling on Nick McLean's motions in limine. We don't know how she's ruling on any of the Frank's motions that started way back when. Like some of them are over 6 months old. We don't know what she's going to say about. There was one more thing, I think. Anyway, so she's got all that out there, and basically the defense is like, we need to have a hearing about all these motions in limine, and we need to talk about the timing of this because this seems like it's going to be unfair to Richard Allen and violate his Sixth Amendment right to a fair trial. Especially because she's like, well, this is how long it's going to take. So what happens if, I mean, Nick McClellan right now has like over 100 people witnesses. So if you have like 3 days for jury selection, you've got like just 2 weeks left. How are you going to? We've watched other trials. Doesn't go as fast as you would always like it. So I don't know. She is going to run court Saturdays, and the jury is going to be fully sequestered, which is a huge pain for any jury members. But not as much pain as being locked up for life. I mean, he's already been locked up for over a year. It's almost 2 years. It was it's crazy. Delphi's nuts. All right, I'm never going to Indiana. I'm going to try to avoid the state as much as possible. That was it, people. We're still under an hour. So, Skelly, do you have anything to add? No? All right. We're going to say goodnight, and I'm going to eat my dinner finally. And if you have any comment, it would be great if you could like or subscribe. We'll be back here tomorrow to give a little first crush squeeze on all the juicy goss that went on in the true crime world that I saw. And if you see anything that I haven't seen, put it in the comments. Would love to hear. Again, and if you disagree with what I say, let me know why. That would be great. I'm up for learning new things. I'm sure I've heard things that aren't accurate or I misunderstood. So if you want to set me straight, hit me up in the comments. All right. Bye.